Okay, here we are back at Scuderia Silva, and we've accomplished one major feat over here. Now we're going to step back a little bit. This is the hot rod we're working on. We had a leak from the this rear axle housing, and it was coming from this outer seal, which normally doesn't leak, but they get old and cruddy. And so we'll just put that back together. There's not a lot of, it's got a nice O-ring in there. There's not a lot of ways it should actually leak. I'm going to reuse the old gasket since they didn't have one in stock. I don't like putting on a lot of silicone or anything like that unless you absolutely have to, in which case I use black. But for these with an O-ring, you really don't need it. I didn't get into anything in farther than here. We did not take the hub out because the wheel bearings were fine. The shoes were shot, but the wheel cylinder was fine, so we cleaned that all up. The adjusters here, we took apart, cleaned up the rod and greased up the rod that's inside there that is activated with this 5/16 nut back here for the adjuster. This is the adjuster that moves in and out with that 5/16 nut. And then here's the little adjuster pins. And we've got those all cleaned up, and you can see greased up. So those are all cleaned up and ready to get our adjustment going when we need it. So let's start putting this baby together. A Healey has a few different things than some other cars do. One of them is these wild little spacers. Probably hard to see, and I just use a piece of Volkswagen style vacuum line and cut it to length. You can buy these, but it's ridiculous. And they go on these little adjuster pins here. That keeps the brake shoe straight in the system here. And you can see it just barely hangs over the edge of the metal tip there. That's the correct setting. It's probably out a maybe a 64th of an inch, 10 thousandths maybe at the most. So we put those on there. And then we have our own brake shoes that we make in-house here, and we reline them. And we use the special ABEX product for the liners. It's a high-performance lining. Very nice, easy on everything. We'll put this shoe on here first and set that in there, and then we're gonna, that shoe will sit in here. And we'll get our springs lined up here. We'll put one spring in that hole right here. Notice on this one it has the e-brake connection here, so the square part of the shoe on the Healey goes in here first. And then we'll pick this up over here. Then we take the other shoe. And this shoe goes the opposite. So on this one we had the square over here. We only have one e-brake area that works over here. So this shoe goes upside down to that one and actually rides like this. So this is a little trick here. You have to put get the hole in the right slot there. And then we're going to do the same thing up here while it's loose, while keeping it in that other one as well. Now it's in both the right holes. Now what I do is just push it down in the bottom here and get that fixed into the slot where it goes. Make sure that spring doesn't drop out like it just did. There we go, I got it back in the hole. Okay. Now we've got I'm holding this with my thumb. We're going to push this all the way onto this adjuster assembly over here. And you're going to pull down with your fingers. You don't want any of these springs to come loose. You can hurt your fingers pretty nicely here on the brake job. So we'll pull that down, shove that over into there, and get that squared up. And there you go. So now we've got the shoes in place. Let's go ahead and we'll throw the gasket on here. I cleaned it all up rather nicely, and it's an old one but a good one. We've got the rear end indexed here, and so We want to pay attention to these 3 holes. They all mean something, and we'll talk about that later. And so this gasket has 3 holes. So we're going to put that on correctly like this. Gently reuse this little thing. The seal is actually with the O-ring, and this dust seal is important too, but it's not really what's holding the grease back, the oil back. Okay, so that's on properly there. It's all the way down to the bottom of all the shanks there. Fits rather nicely. You want to make sure that you didn't knock your spacer out. There's a spacer right in here. And you want to make sure that that stays with the car when you take all this apart and you're messing around. If you find a ring on the ground, it goes right there, and it sits right on top of this bearing right here. That's the bearing race right here. Here's our spacer. So we slap that baby back on here. Notice how some animal was in here and peed the living daylights out of that. That goes back in here. Now here's my new beautiful O-ring, and what we're going to do with the new beautiful O-ring is I got a little block with some nice grease. We're going to grease up my new beautiful O-ring, and there we go. Make too big a mess. And now my nicely greased up O-ring sits right in this hole right here. And I push it in with my thumbs. I kind of hold it with my finger back here, and hold it, and then run your thumb around and kind of hold it with the other fingers until they meet up here in the middle. Okay, that's in there rather nicely. Everybody's happy. It's got a nice little amount of grease on the area front and back, so it's going to hold on rather nicely over there. So now we're going to offer up our brake drum. Oh, I'm sorry, we have to do the axle first. That'd be better. We'll do the brake drum in a minute. Get our axle in here, and we've got it lined up because we have, once again, the 3 holes that I use for the alignment. Clean this all up and just float that in there like this, and I push my hands down here in the bottom, and then I pull back with my thumbs so I can raise up the axle as I'm trying to get it into the center of the bearing and the hub down there. Make sure we're aligned again. We are. And now I'm just lifting that back part gently, and then you put it over the studs and give her a little love back and forth, and there you go. That's the seal right there. That's all you get. Now we're going to put a screw in it to hold it all down right there, and it's a short one. It's got a Phillips head. You don't have to worry about putting any Loctite or anything on this. This is not going anywhere because it's going to get buried under the hub. We're going to put it down with a little impact driver and a little rubber mallet. Not going to hurt it, I just want it down. So you put that in there and run that down nice. And I'll hold this hub here, crank it by hand, and then I go ahead and preload this. You don't have to do this, I do it. And I just give it a tough couple slaps like that. Okay, now we've got our axle back in, and it's obviously in gear because I can't turn it. Yep, imagine that. Okay, now we're going to put the brake drum on next here. And so for that, we have a newly machined brake drum. And you always want to have the machine flattened out. And we're just going to make sure there's no grease or anything in here. Clean up the inside of the hub a little bit. Just take any dirt out of there. Now that's nice. Now once again, we have our 3 holes. So knock off any dust that we have in there. There's our same 3 holes. Now we've used the middle one, so it wants to go on like this. And now, as I told you, I retracted the adjuster all the way, and the hydraulics are pushed in all the way, and actually I loosened the line there. So we're going to put this on here. We might have to wiggle it around a little tiny bit to get the shoes centered in the drum. There we go. And we pushed them all the way on. Okay, that is now seated. You can see air between here. That's just how the casting is. You can feel when it's seated because it's down on the flat plate behind here. And that is correctly seated. There we go. So then we're going to throw these on. These are a longer Phillips head flat screw. And those hold the drums on. And it's just 2 of those. That uses up to 3 holes. Okay. Now, once again, I got it as tight as I can get it. I just give them a couple whacks. They're not going anywhere. There's nowhere to go. Okay. Lastly, we have this extraordinarily dirty hub. Old Hubba Hubba over here. And it just has 5 holes, as you can see. You want to make sure the back is clean. And we've indexed this with a little mark. And there the mark is. This one goes right there. So we're going to set that on just like that. Now, we have 5 new lock nuts. They're, I believe they're 5/8. And these new lock nuts, you just got to reuse these. It holds the entire rear wheel assembly on the car for wire wheel cars like this one. And so if you don't use the new lock nuts, you're just begging for trouble. And you can use red Loctite on them. I think they cost $1 something a piece. I just, you know, we sell them here. Scuderia Silva, I think they're $1 something a piece. We got 5 on each side. Just do them. And so I'll grab my air gun, set it on low, run these down, and then I'll go ahead and get my torque gun out. I'm going to set the parking brake right now. I'll get the torque wrench out after I run them down and just get most of the length out of them. And then we're going to go ahead and torque them, and then I'll be able to we'll adjust them and bleed them. Probably just adjust them now. I'm going to take it out of gear and put my 5/16 right back here on the back of the adjuster wheel and just start turning it. And as I turn it, the tip of that adjuster will go down and it'll push those 2 pieces out that you saw me grease, and that'll push on the shoes. And so we'll go down until I can feel the shoes just barely start to drag on the inside of the drum, and then we'll leave it right there and not go too crazy till after we test drive. We can check them and adjust them again, but for now we just run them down until they just touch, and we'll pump the brake pedal a few times as we get this bled out. I've run the nuts down. I've now torqued them to 60 foot-pounds, and I've done it all the way around, so we're done with that. Now I'll take off the parking brake, which I set temporarily, and I'll take it out of gear. There we go. And now we're just going to turn the, there's a 5/16 open end wrench, and I'm just going to turn the wheels. I can hear the brake shoes are getting close. You can feel with your fingers back here, there's 3 studs, there's 2 small ones, and then the longest one's the one you want to work on. And we're going to rotate it toward the back of the car. There's 1 click, still not on them. There's another click. I can just start to feel them touching now. And there's 1 more click, and they're really starting to drag now. And so that's a little tighter than I want. So I'm just going to back it off, that 1 click there. We'll call that good, keeping in mind we're going to readjust this after we go for a test drive and after we finish bleeding the system. So that's how you do the hub and rear brakes on an Austin-Healey. Thanks for watching.